and I'm just recording this because I also do a podcast. So that will be going up on the podcast, this webinar as well. So just bouncing back to what I was saying. So I think almost every mum at one point in time has said that they don't have time to exercise, or they don't have time to eat well. And we do tend to find when we get quite busy that we tend to get caught up in the overwhelm, and we put ourselves last because everyone else becomes a priority. So I wanted to talk about, first of all, what overwhelm actually means. And for many of us, it's the invisible load that piles up in our day. So think of things like you've got too many weights on your shoulders, or you've got too many internet browsers open going on in your head. And eventually your body can't take any more, or the internet browsers, the tabs just become too full and everything just crashes and shuts down. So that's sort of a summary of what overwhelm means to me. Now, I wanted to get into, before we tackle the how can we start exercising more, or how we can exercise within our day, I wanted to talk around the mindset that you're probably experiencing, and this could be the unlocking factor of why you're finding that you are too busy and how you can actually overcome overwhelm. So sometimes overwhelm is referred to as anxiety, or more commonly stress. And for many people in the Western world, stress can sometimes be a word that they use for fear. So it seems a little bit silly to be fearful of our to-do list, but stick with me here because I'm getting somewhere with this one. So this fear, when peeled right back, can sometimes have to do with how people perceive us or how people may view our actions. So that might look like, for some of us, if you don't have a clean house, that you're going to be judged by people. So that becomes more important than doing other things that you want to do. If you're not volunteering at school events, you feel that other people are going to judge you. And so you do all of this volunteering and you become completely overwhelmed with all of the tasks that you've taken on. If you're running late to something, again, you're feared that you might be judged. And so that then leads to overwhelm. And another example could be that you feel like you're not helping enough people. You should be helping this person, and you feel like you're being judged because you're not able to help the people that you're wanting to help, or the amount of people that you're wanting to help. And so this also leads to feeling overwhelmed because you're not able to do what you perceive people think that you should be doing. So one question that I want you, or that you might like to ask yourself when you're experiencing this is this just my fear, or what is triggering my thoughts here? Okay, so is this just my fear, or what is triggering my thoughts? So it might be what's triggering your thoughts is that you're a people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser, so I love to please people and make people happy and smile. So when you can't do all of those things, then you begin to feel quite overwhelmed. And that's not a great place that we want to be in, because if we're feeling overwhelmed, then of course there's no time to exercise. You're busy pleasing all of the people. You're busy being overwhelmed by these things that you're perceiving people are expecting you to be doing. So now I want to get into a bit of the neuroscience behind it as well. And I wanted to talk about the amygdala. And I actually, in my notes here, I had to spell that out phonetically because it's a hard one to pronounce, but it's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is located in your brain. So basically what the amygdala is, it's a component of the limbic system, as I said, located in your brain, and it plays an important role in your emotions and your behavioral responses. So there's some research out there that suggests that the amygdala is involved with evaluating things in the environment to determine their importance, and then generates an emotional response to that stimuli that are considered important. So for example, if you're looking at this in the context of like being busy, you might walk past a pile of dishes that are in the sink and you may have an emotional response to this. So that emotional response might be a calm response of, oh, there's a pile of dishes there, I'll get to that later. Or it might be a big emotional response with, oh my gosh, I've just got so much to do. I've got this pile of dishes, I've got all this, and then suddenly it starts shooting off all the other things that are going on. So Daniel Goleman, in his book that's called Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, refers to the amygdala. I'm going to tongue twist that every time. The amygdala hijack is the term he has come up with. And he describes this as an emotional response that's immediate, it's overwhelming, and it's out of measure with the actual stimulus. So therefore, an amygdala hijack, when you're walking past a pile of dishes and you're just feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed out, and you feel like the weight is on your shoulders, the weight of the world is on your shoulders, that suggests to me that you are in a state of overwhelm just there, and you are having an there we go with the tongue twister, amygdala hijack, where you're getting sent all these emotional responses that could be completely out of context depending on other things that are going on in your world. And if you are feeling overwhelmed and you do feel like there's a huge to-do list, then that there's a certain amount of fear there which gives you that emotional response. So that's the neuroscience side of things. Does anyone have any questions so far? And if you do, type them in the chats just there, and I'm most happy to answer them. Or you can, I don't know, I don't think there's a put up your hand function in Zoom, but you can say, hey, I want to ask a question. No questions? Okay. All right, well, I wanted to then move on to talking about stories. And these are not like nice bedtime stories. These are stories that we tell ourselves. And you may or may not have heard of Dr. Libby Weaver. I have learned so much through her around overwhelm and stress and how our body responds to stress. Dr. Libby talks about the stories that we have as choosing your own playlist, or choosing your playlist. Excuse me. So we're so used to being busy for the sake of it that we'll look for ways to be busy. So I don't know about you, but I find this a very common thread when people ask how you are. And the most common response is busy. So these days you don't really get good thanks. You get good thanks. I've been so busy. Or how are you? Oh, I'm so busy at the moment. And you launch into why ever you're busy. Sometimes when we're looking at this in a story sense, we talk ourselves into this busyness. And so the problem is that when you're being busy for busy's sake, because that's what you do, you're used to being busy, you can't see the time that is actually available to you. And this is where I'm going to walk through you through these steps in just a short amount of time soon. But I wanted to give another example there. So, for example, when you're continually telling yourself that you're too busy to exercise, so when you have that rhetoric going through your mind, oh, I'm too busy to exercise, I'm too busy to do X, Y, Z, or whatever it might be, then you start to believe that you are too busy to exercise. So then we've got to think, well, why do we tell ourselves these stories? And how do we start telling ourselves a new story? So often these stories are stories that we have been using for a while. So I very much doubt that you're listening to this webinar because you've been busy on one day out of the entire year and you were too busy to exercise on that one day. You're most likely watching this webinar or watching the replay because you have been experiencing this state of I'm too busy to exercise, and it's been a persistent thing. It's been something that's been happening over a longer period of time. And it could be that you've had that story going on through your mind that you are too busy to exercise. So if we've been using that story for a while, then we've started to develop a habit. And you may not even notice that you're saying these stories to yourself anymore because it has become a habit. So let's talk about how we move forward from these habits. So the first thing is we need to start setting up new stories. And I know that seems really simplistic, but the next time you catch yourself saying that you're too busy to exercise, stop yourself and examine the situation. Because are you too busy to exercise? Or could you be reframing that story? Could you perhaps be saying, today I've got a number of tasks to get through, but I have time for, say, 5 minutes of focused movement? Or could you be saying, right now I'm feeling like I have a lot on my plate, I love my body, and I will make time to do some focused movement. So those are just small tweaks to the story that you're telling yourself. But with that comes the change in habit, the change in your thinking. And that's the mindset side of things. Let's get to the practical side of things now. And so the practical side of things is, well, okay, that's all well and good to have that story. How do we implement some of this? And I'm going to talk about prioritizing your day. Now, I'm not here to tell you that exercise is the be all and end all, and you must be exercising and you must not do X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's for you to discover by yourself. But I do want you to keep an open mind with what I do have to say coming up. And I'm not here to tell you how to shuffle around your day, and I'm definitely not here to say get up an hour earlier before everyone has woken up, because that is something I very strongly do not believe in, because sleep is just as important in your health journey. However, let's address the elephant in the room here, and it might just be my elephant, but I'm going to address it anyway, and that's screen time. Even though I'm presenting this webinar on a screen, kind of very ironic there. But multiple studies have found that we spend dozens of hours every week in front of the screen. And in 2013, the ABS reported that adults spent an average of 13 hours per week watching TV. Now that's 2013. That was before Netflix and before Stan and before all the live streaming really was around. So a more recent survey has found that Australians spend an average of 46 hours per week in front of screens. Kind of phenomenal, isn't it? 46 hours per week. So that doesn't mean you need to give up your favorite TV shows or throw out your iPhone or whatever it might be. But what it does mean is that you can choose how many hours you dedicate to screens and whether you want to shift an hour or two each week towards working on your health instead. Now, as I said, I'm not here to tell you exactly what you need to do, and I'm not here to judge or anything like that. But I wanted to share that because those are pretty scary statistics. And a lot of the clients that I work with, when we do get down to the nuts and bolts of things, that is something we do discover is showing up for them. So, moving on from that, when it comes to the never-ending to-do list, let's look at breaking that down, okay? So, I tend to break my day down into 3 main priorities. And I like to break those down into 3 main priorities that I would like to be focusing on. So they might be things like, today I'm going to focus on work, family time, and a hobby. Or it might be I'm going to focus on family time, some leisure time, and some downtime. It might also include, as one of my priorities, today I'm going to eat 3 nutritious meals. Or as one of my main priorities, today I'm going to do 30 minutes of exercise. Now, the priorities there is quite different to your to-do list, because your to-do list in reality is never ending. There's always going to be something to add on that to-do list. But what we're doing is, with the 3 main priorities, we're taking what's on that to-do list, taking 3 of those aside, and today, that's what I'm going to focus on. And if I get time to do the other things here, cool. But otherwise, I'm focusing on these 3 main priorities. Now, does exercise fit into those priorities? The answer is not always yes. But if it's not on there, then that's where you can find another day where you can make that a priority. So you might find it easier to prioritize exercise earlier in the week when you're feeling more energetic. I don't know about you, but I certainly get to Friday and feel absolutely exhausted and shattered. So you might find that exercise earlier in the week works for you. Or you might also find that exercise fits better for you in the weekend because your partner can watch the kids for a while. But that's around prioritizing and scheduling your exercising as well. So while we're there, let's get clear on why it's a priority for you. Because exercise isn't just about looking a certain way or losing weight when we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. It might be that you choose to exercise to feel more confident in yourself. You might choose to exercise to boost your mood or relieve stress or reduce anxiety, or even boost some of your energy when you're tired. And yes, exercise actually does that in a really weird way. Just ask my Saturday morning clients who see me when they rock up at 8 a.m. I always I go, hello, and they're all really exhausted. And then by 9 o'clock, they're bouncing off the walls. So exercise does do that too. But again, I've gone off on a tangent. What I wanted to do, and I'll just bring us back to my point here, is we need to find out why, about why we want to exercise. And once you have found that why, then you'll find that the motivation to make it a priority becomes a lot higher. So when I'm goal setting with my personal training clients, and I also do this within my membership, in fact, it's a very huge part of my membership is the goal setting component of that. Because I talk about this a lot, because this always leads us back to why it is that we're doing what we're doing and why we need to do what we're doing to get to where we want to go. But when we're asking why, it's not just a simple question. We really need to get down to the bottom of why it is that you're wanting to do something. So for example, if I asked you, why do you want to exercise, or why do you exercise? And you say you want to work out 3 times a week. That's your goal, okay? So I ask you, well, why? Why do you want to work out 3 times a week? You might come back with, well, I want to be healthier. So then I'll come back to you and say, well, why do you want to be healthier? And then you might come back and say, well, I'm always exhausted. I have trouble keeping up with the children. They're just bouncing off the walls and I'm just tired. So then we dive in a little bit further. So keep asking why to the answer that you have provided to the previous question. And eventually you're going to get to a point where it sort of hits you in the gut. Okay, so once it hits you in the gut, or you almost feel like you're going to cry, or whatever that might be, it's an emotional response. From there, you know your why. Okay, so that's where you can then look at switching to, sorry, I don't know why I said switching to. That's why you can then focus on why you're choosing to exercise, or why you're choosing to move more in your day. And often I'll find that once you've got that deep why and that deep understanding of why it is that you want to exercise, suddenly exercise becomes a little bit higher on your priority list. In fact, it might even make the top 3 in your priority list, because you deeply understand why it is that exercise is there. It's not because you should exercise. You now understand why it is that you're exercising. And then once that's there in your priority list, then suddenly it becomes a habit. And suddenly you don't find that you're coming up with the story of, I'm too busy to exercise, because exercise has become a priority. And it's become a priority because you know deeply why it is that you have chosen for this to be a thing that you're wanting to focus on in your life. So let's talk about examples of exercise quickly, because we really do need to sometimes lose our perception of what we believe exercise should or shouldn't do, or should or shouldn't be. So for example, this is really common that we see exercise as that 60-minute gym session and you go 3 times a week, for example. Or I'm too busy to exercise because I do not have 30 minutes to follow along a video. So we've got to break that story there as well, because exercise does not mean a set workout. It does not mean going to the gym and smashing yourself there, okay? Exercise is movement. So basically we want to just find time to start moving more in our day. So how can you do this practically when you are busy? And I know that we've got children and I know that we're running around through our day. So one thing I mentioned to a lot of the ladies that I work with is chunking. So chunking is finding small chunks of time in your day that you can use to do some extra movement. So it might be 5 minutes before breakfast. It might be 5 minutes before lunch. It might be 5 minutes as you grab some afternoon tea and 5 minutes in the evening. Those 4 lots of 5 minutes adds up to a 20-minute exercise or 20 minutes worth of movement that you've done in your day. And every bit of movement is counted as exercise. And every bit of movement adds up. It all counts. It's better than nothing at all. So first of all, that's chunking, is finding those small chunks in your day. Another thing I recommend is intentional incidental exercise. And this is a term that I've coined myself, and it is around intentionally taking opportunity when you find those incidental moments to exercise. So for example, those could be for, say if you've got a younger child, it could be when they're in the bath and they're too little to leave in the bath, so you're just sort of waiting around in the bath. Could you not do some squats while you're watching them in the bath? While you're waiting for the kettle to boil, can you do some squats then? While you are on hold on the telephone, could you do some marching on the spot or some walking around the house or something like that? Those are all intentionally taking advantage of those incidental moments that you're finding in your day to do some exercise. And a favorite of mine, although I must admit I get nervous when I'm around other people at the park, is my son. I've got my 4-year-old loves to swing on the swings. So I squat in between each push, but then I get a bit self-conscious when other moms are there. But that could be something that you're quite happy to do. So there's just another opportunity there. And then the last thing that I wanted to say around how you can find more opportunities to move and do exercise in your day is turn exercise into play and get creative with your children around what you can do to increase your movement. So for example, if you've got older children, say primary age children, 8-year-olds, you could go out into the backyard and kick the ball. You could do some handball. You could do some competitions. Who can hold the plank the longest? Who can hold a squat the longest? If you've got little ones, excuse me, say 2-year-olds, then you can do things like, can you crawl under the tunnel and you're holding a plank while they have to crawl under the tunnel? Another thing could be doing squats while they're on your back, so you're carrying them on your back, or doing sit-ups and you sit up and clap them, or push-ups while they're laying down and you give them a kiss. All of those type of things is really a lot of fun that you can do with your kids, but you're moving more. You're getting exercise in your day there. I love to turn songs into our workouts too. So one of the ones I do is going on a bear hunt, and we'll go on a bear hunt and, you know, we'll have to squat to go under, I don't know, whatever it is that we can't go under it, and that type of thing as well. So bringing movement into the play that you're doing with your children. And now that my son is a little bit older, I do find that we're outside kicking the ball constantly or playing handball constantly every single night. So those are some little ideas there that you might find in regards to how you can move more. in your day. And particularly if you've only got 5 minutes or less, well, still in 5 minutes, you can still do, say, 50 star jumps, 50 squats, 50 lunges. I say star jumps pending the strength of your pelvic floor. Another area that I'm deeply passionate about, and making sure women are not doing extra damage to their pelvic floor areas. But yeah, there's just some ideas. I'm just going to pause, take breath, and see if anyone's got any questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come through. So I'm going to finish up by recapping on the key main points that I've shared with you for you to move past the story of you're too busy to exercise and how you can overcome overwhelm. And that is 1, to start resetting your story. Okay, so resetting your story is set new habits and what you say to yourself. Stop saying I'm too busy to exercise, because you'll believe and you'll take action like that if you are. Number 2 was to prioritize your day. So this doesn't mean that exercise must be a priority, but do work out what you want to be a priority in your day so that you can move beyond overwhelm. And 3, working through your why. So why do you want to exercise? Once you know this, you'll likely then make it a priority and your story resets automatically too. So that's the end of my webinar. And I just wanted to touch back and just let you know that this mindset component is just one of the things that we do cover in my membership group. So the membership group goes through 12-week challenges if members are choosing to participate in the 12-week challenge, or you can work through your resources in your own times as well. But one of the big things that I'm particularly passionate about is supporting and keeping accountable all of the ladies in the group so that they are able to move forward towards improving whatever the goal that they might be having regarding improving their health or their fitness in general. So if that membership does pique your interest, or you are looking to work with me further, the doors are opening to my membership in November. And if you'd like to be on my wait list for the challenge round, the next 12-week challenge round, which will start in November, then please make sure that you contact me, and I will ensure that you're on the wait list so that you can be the first to receive any information. So that takes me to the end there, ladies. I'm going to stop recording